Their standard procedure is they immobilize you somehow, either by hanging you from your ankles, or like with handcuffs from a pipe in the ceiling, or a hook in the ceiling, or they kind of stuff your body. They lock you into a used tire, and they handcuff your hands behind your back so that your hands and your feet are sticking up in the air. And then comes the electricity on top of you, and the cables, like these galvanized steel cables that rip up your flesh, basically. I mean, it is the kind of thing they do this because, well, I mean, I think they do it for a number of reasons, but among other things, like these things don't kill you, but they make you feel as though you are being killed. And that brings you like into a state of a psychological state of like deep submission and just, I'll do anything to have you spare my life.
When rebel forces seized control of Syria, toppling the regime of Bashar al-Assad and ending his family's brutal 50-year dictatorship, there was in some corners jubilation and in others trepidation. The Islamist militant group that now rules Syria is known as HTS, but it was set up under a different name, the Al-Nusra Front, as a direct affiliate of Al-Qaeda. One person who knows more about Syria's new rulers than most is the American journalist Theo Padnos, and he joins me now. Hello, Theo.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for being with us. Look, you were captured and tortured by this group for 2 years. Let's start with your capture back in 2012. What were you doing in Syria at the time?
At the time, my adventure in Syria began in Antakya, Turkey, where I was a freelancer and hoping to make kind of day trips into Syria. I met up with 3 young men on a hotel balcony in Antakya. They swiftly took me into the country and kidnapped me, announced that they were from the Tanzim al-Qaeda, which is the al-Qaeda system. They pointed a gun at my face during the course of an interview, sort of like this one. And because they film everything they do. And within a matter of hours after that, I escaped from these young men who were really amateurs in the terrorism world, but I went swiftly on to the local police, and they evaluated the situation. They're like, well, we don't really know if he's a spy or what. Let's take him to the Islamic court. And at the Islamic court, which proceedings they also filmed, the judge asked me a few questions and then determined that I was a spy and sent me straight on to Mohammed Adnani, who was the leader of Jabhat al-Nusra at the time. He subsequently went on to become famous for the Bataclan attacks and for burning alive the many people and assassinating them in horrible, lurid ways, these snuff films that ISIS became famous for. That's what this guy is the genius of that. He's like the social media master. He was eventually killed by drone. Anyway, when I knew him, he was very psychotic, and he was the chief of a little house in the northern part of Syria where there were some mujahideen from France, some from Iraq, and a few from Syria. But at that time, in October of 2012, that was the Islamic State. So out of this little farmhouse grew an enormous, like, global entity, which caused much havoc and mayhem. And eventually this guy, of course, he had like an argument with the top people in the Jabhat al-Nusra, and he broke away and he said, now me and my friends are going to call ourselves the Islamic State.
When they kidnapped you, why did they kidnap you? What did they hope to get out of you? Was it because they disliked you as a Westerner and a suspect spy? Was it because they wanted information from you? Was it just because this is what they were doing with anyone they could?
Not anyone they could, but they suspected me because I was an American, probably because I spoke Arabic. I think the individuals like that I met in Turkey, they were interested in my iPhone. But we journalists represent enormous piles of cash, among other things. They know that if they hold us long enough, they can get money for us. And at that time, I don't think that, certainly my people, the first kidnappers, wanted me probably just to convert me into cash. But when I got to Adnani, he recognized like a powerful public relations coup that he could do. Like, here I have a spy. Look at him confessing, which I did under torture. It doesn't take very long for them to bring you into that state of psychological compliance where you want to give them what they want because you feel that if you don't, they're going to kill you. They tell you that, by the way. So you tell us the truth about you, and we won't kill you. So the first thing you say is, I'm not a spy. I'm a journalist. I'm telling you the truth. And that doesn't go over well. The torture continues. And so eventually you get with a program. It took me an absurdly long time to figure out that I was supposed to, when they said tell the truth, I was supposed to lie. But okay, eventually I figured that out. And I lied. Yes, the CIA. Yes, I hate Islam. Yes, I despise you all. And I was planning to send bombing coordinates back to the CIA. Once I was able to tell them all that, that took maybe a half hour. Then the torture stopped. But after the torture, they told me, like, half of what you told us was lies. And if you lie one more time, we will kill you. So we're going to bring you back tomorrow night. We'll see how it goes.
Theo, you talk about this very freely, and I've no wish to make you revisit distressing things. But when you talk about torture, what kind of things were you subjected to?
I mean, I think their standard procedure is they immobilize you somehow, either by hanging you from your ankles, or like with handcuffs from a pipe in the ceiling, or a hook in the ceiling, or they kind of stuff your body. They lock you into a used tire, and they handcuff your hands behind your back so that your hands and your feet are sticking up in the air. And then comes the electricity on top of you, and the cables, like these galvanized steel cables that rip up your flesh, basically. I mean, it is the kind of thing they do this because, well, I mean, I think they do it for a number of reasons, but among other things, like these things don't kill you, but they make you feel as though you are being killed. And that brings you like into a state of a psychological state of like deep submission and just, I'll do anything to have you spare my life. And you stay that way. Like they do it once. Okay. You come back. But when you start to see these weapons that they use, and the sight of the torture instrument is enough to bring you into that state of compliance that they want. It's like they put it in front of your cell. They just drop the instrument in front of your cell, and you can see the barbs underneath the bottom of the cell door. And you're like, oh, I better not.
You've talked before about how when you were being tortured, it was often by men in masks, but people who you recognized because they were with you a lot of the rest of the time as well, but also by local children who they'd bring in.
Right. I mean, I believe that the purpose of the torture is kind of like an initiation ceremony. It always occurs, or often occurs, late at night. There's a community thing where they have some elders, some spiritual authorities. They have a lot of young kids, and these people are holding hands. And they have the foreigners, also watching. And many torture victims are often tortured at once. And of course, we are the enemies of Islam, and they are the wise and far-seeing protectors of Islam. And they have like located the wicked threat to the sacred place and the sacred people. And now they are going to like purge the people and purge the sin from the people. And they're going to purge the wicked invaders also from the sacred place. And, when they do this to people who are sick or people who have been injured, those people do not survive that torture. And the purging happens like before the eyes of the children. But I was like a, healthy young man, and I wasn't killed, but it was just by luck. It was like, these are not like medical professionals. They don't go, oh, what kind of pain can he survive? And then we'll bring him up to that level. They just keep doing it until they think that you are in that state of psychological and physical compliance that they want. And then, they don't trust that one time is enough. They want that over and over and over again until it does happen, until you are with them physically and psychologically. And, I think most people, even the Syrians, like they come in, maybe Alawites, but they come out Sunni, Allahu Akbar, praying in the proper way. And there's, slight variations between the ways of prayer in Islam. But with these guys, you got to do it right. And if you do it wrong, whack, whack, whack. And eventually you get with the program.
And look, I mean, the group that were holding you then, Al-Nusra, who were they at the time? What kind of status did they have? What did they want fundamentally?
I mean, I think that they wanted to purify the nation of the minorities in the CIA. I think that's the purpose. Is the minorities in Syria are the Ismailis, the Shia, Christians, and the Alawites. And there's millions of them. And they feel that through the centuries, these horrible Alawites have been infiltrating, possibly from Israel, as they often said. I'm like, Israel? They don't come from there. And they're like, well, maybe more from Iran then. Okay, anyway, the outsiders, the other, and they've been coming in and hiding, dissembling. And in fact, there is some historical, through the centuries, Benjamin Disraeli, by the way, wrote a novel in which a traveler goes through this area and discusses the Alawites. And in this novel, Tancred, he says, you know what? Or there's a character who says, one thing we don't know is who the hell these Alawites are. They're not Muslims. They're not Christians. They're not this. They're not Druze. We don't know what they are. So anyway, it's not just Disraeli. It's travelers through the centuries have tried to identify what the beliefs of this Alawite sect are. And in fact, it's a secret religion, and you have to be initiated into it. And they don't initiate even their own Alawite children all the time. So it is a secret religion. And of course, it causes suspicion and causes, because it's secret, people mistrust them. And then one of the things that is said about these Alawites is that they dissemble, they disguise themselves as Muslims, they go into the mosques, and as they pray, they curse God and they poison the faith of the people. When I was with the Alawite prisoners, of course, it was like it broke. It would have broken your heart. It breaks anyone's heart because they carry these Qurans, like tiny thumbnail-sized Qurans, in the vest pockets of their military coats. And the Jabhat al-Nusra took every last Quran that was visible because they felt that the power of the Alawites would pollute the sacred power of the book. So these poor Alawites, they kept in their breast pocket, they kept a tiny little Quran this size, and eventually they found those Qurans too and took them. So in the darkness, these men would sit and recite these beautiful verses. And they would, in the quietest tones because they didn't want to be overheard. It's like, according to Jabhat al-Nusra, you're not Muslim. And kulliyatkum kuffar. It's like, you're all unbelievers. But to me, they were pretty damn believing, and they needed this book. And the Jabhat al-Nusra men took it, of course. And what did they do in the end? All those men were killed. And I know why they were killed. They were not killed because they committed this crime or that crime against the people of Syria. Nobody investigated their crimes. I was with them for 7 months. It's like, the only question they ask is, Intum Alawi? Why not Alawi? Ta'al. It's like, which one of you is Alawi?
Al-Nusra became HTS. HTS is now led by Mohammed al-Jilani, who's a jihadist who joined Al-Qaeda to fight in Iraq in 2003. He spent time in a US military jail, time in Abu Ghraib, and he went back to Syria and founded the Nusra Front. When you were being held captive by the group, what did you know of al-Jilani?
Nothing. I just knew he was on TV and the journalists were interviewing him. I'm like, wow, he does a great interview.
He was on the scene. I mean, you knew that he existed.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Well, I learned of him during the course of my detention. And I'm like, maybe those journalists could maybe ask you about the prisoners and the torture. No, they don't do that. They're like, do you intend to attack the regime from the left flank, or what are the governing principles that you will govern by? And he's like, well, we love puppy dogs and the rainbows, and we love the justice and the harmony, and that's what we want. And the journalists are like, yes, the justice, and was that harmony? Yes, we write down the harmony. And off it goes.
I mean, you've said that since the Assad regime fell, you've seen footage on TV of HTS in Damascus, and there are people you've recognized from when you were held prisoner, right?
Yeah, I mean, one guy in particular came to give us like Islamic speeches. Now, I saw him on a video the other day in front of the municipal court in Aleppo, saying, here's the municipal court, and now it will be mahkam shara'i. It will be like the law of God will govern this tribunal, this court, and so will the law of God also govern like all of Syria. And having been tried myself within such a court, I can tell you that the procedures are rather arbitrary.
Do you expect that under al-Jilani's leadership, under HTS, Syria is not going to be the sort of the multi-faith peaceful place that many in the West hope it's going to be? That it's going to be something closer to what you experienced at their hands?
I mean, I tell you, what's happening now is like these guys have been living in a cave for 10 years. All of them, they've been in the darkness. And it's like the Pirates of Penzance, like, remember Frederick comes crawling out of the cave at the end and he goes like, oh, is there not one maiden here whose only face is bad complexion? It's like they're all the pirates and they're coming out into the world and they're having a wonderful time. They're looking around, they go, oh, there's all of this and there's Christians in Syria and and it's like they want to be friendly with these people. They're curious and open. But their dream and the thing that they have been conditioned to believe and feel in their hearts is to render the Syrian body politic in a state of deep psychological compliance with God. And they know how to, like, the prayer ritual enacts that. It's like, this is what you do. This is why you perform the prostration. It's because you are enacting, first of all, your togetherness as a community, and secondly, your harmony with God. That's why you face Mecca. And so it's a beautiful thing. But they would like this for all of Syria, and they would like the Christians to pray in the Christian way. And but make sure you bring yourselves into harmony with God. It's wrong, but God tolerates it, they think. And the Jews too. It's like, but they think that these are the legit religions. Now, there's some people that have no legit religion, like the Ismailis and the Alawites and the Yazidis, for instance. There are no Yazidis in Syria, but there are a lot of Iraqi mujahideen in Syria, and they will be making the law. So, it's like those people, they have to get with a program. Otherwise, they are infidels, and then they're in trouble. I mean, what is the real problem with what we would like social stability in Syria? The problem is that when some young men with guns get it in their minds that that person is not doing the prayer correctly or is cursing God secretly, and they eliminate that person in the night, which has already been happening, the co-religionists of that minority person are going to flee. And, that's what they want. They often, to me, they were always saying, we will have the Christians to Beirut and the Alawites in the grave. That's the vision for Syria. By the way, our group was called Tanzim al-Qaeda bi Bilad al-Sham, that is the al-Qaeda organization in the land of Sham. And for them, the land of Sham is Israel too. So, and the invasion has come from Europe. And the invaders, the most powerful, most ancient, most numerous invaders are the Jews, which, they want to either expel or kill. And I don't think they really prefer the expulsion method because they're angry. So anyway, we're seeing all these beautiful celebrations in downtown Damascus, and I completely acknowledge that it is beautiful because they've gotten rid of a horrible dictator. However, if we saw such celebrations in downtown Tel Aviv, which would occur if they were able to take over Tel Aviv, I don't think we would be as happy for the celebrants as we are at the moment. Forget about the past. It's like, well, what's the future for we would acknowledge and recognize that this is not the government is not a government that is going to take into interest the accounts of the minorities in the region. The Jews are a minority in the region. And the dream of Jabhat al-Nusra is to unite the Muslims and expel the minority.
Understood. Look, many of the people, your fellow prisoners, when you were held, didn't make it out alive. How were you freed, and why do you think you did make it through?
I mean, I was freed because the beautiful nation of Qatar decided that it could, because they could. They had connections with Jabhat al-Nusra, and James Foley, unfortunately, was beheaded. And then the U.S. government said, geesh, all this weapons and cash that we've been sending into the Syrian rebels, some of them appear to have gone rogue. And now they're cutting off the heads of the American journalists, and this is just bad luck. So they called up their friends in Qatar, and they said, by the way, that American journalist Theo that we said you shouldn't pay for because they knew where I was for a long time and they had relations. We said, no paying for hostages, but now we changed our minds, so pay for this guy. And Qatar was like, sure, no problem, because this is pocket change for us. And furthermore, we've been sponsoring this rebellion for a long time, and we give them big dollars anyway, so it's a little bit more, and therefore my life was spared.
They had the leverage to get you out.
They had the guy on speed dial.
And when you were released, you basically crossed into Israel in the Golan Heights, right?
That's right. I crossed into Israel and the Golan Heights because the intelligence security apparatus like the people who were the Qataris were worried that if they had released me into Jordan, as they were initially planning to do, the Jabhat al-Nusra of Jordan, which does exist according to the Qataris, but nobody knows about it, would then take me into custody, and there would be a whole new problem. So they're like, just send them to the Israelis.
What was it like arriving in Israel after all this time in captivity?
It was like Alice in Wonderland. It was like stepping into, it was through the looking glass. Well, first of all, I saw these Jewish people, and I'm like, do you know that they'll kill you for it? How could you dare dress like that? And then I realized, there's a fence between us and them. They're not going to come. But yeah, every person, since I had been living with men of the jihad, as they call themselves, and their supporters for 2 years, when I encountered people on the street, I kind of at first assumed that maybe they were really with Jabhat al-Nusra, but they're pretending not to be. So I didn't want to tell them anything about myself. But it took me 24 hours, and then I was fine.
Wow. Look, I understand you're still in contact with some of the people who held you and indeed tortured you. Regular contact, daily contact. Why?
Yes, they call me up all the time. I'm curious and interested in what they're doing. I'm curious about what they plan, how happy they are. Some of these people were very good to me. It's like, now maybe they need help. Am I going to be bad to them? I mean, I always told them during captivity, like, no, you're a nice guy. And, it was true, although, there were times when they were nice to me. So I wanted to encourage niceness. And by the way, in general, now the world is in a situation where we have a government that is, they think Hamas are like weak and sad and pathetic. So, because they have democracy, they always vote in elections. These guys are parliamentarians, always dressing in suits. So the rank and file of Jabhat al-Nusra think that Hamas is bad. Now we have like a much more powerful Hamas in Damascus, and the only way we can stop them from doing another October 7th is to like work with them and persuade them and hope. We and the Israeli government, the U.S. government and the Israelis helped these people for a long time, and now we have them. So now what? Well, in my view, having lived with these people for 2 years, I think the best way is to talk with them and to persuade them that death and martyrdom and the virgins and heaven, maybe you can accomplish something more meaningful here.
What are you hearing from them at the moment, the people you're in touch with? Are they excited? Are they frightened? Are they jubilant? I mean,
yes, the people I happen to be speaking with were like ISIS guys. They were Jabhat al-Nusra guys that defected over to ISIS. So I talked to them the other day, and they're like, well, Jolani's a jerk. They don't like him. They feel he's kind of corrupt and has gone he's styling himself as a Westerner. And they feel this is a betrayal of Islam. But everybody else within Jabhat al-Nusra, they like. It's just the top guy. They're like, no, you're doing the Islam thing wrong. But I think they will, once Jolani starts giving these guys some cash, they will shut up with their little criticism and they'll get with the program.
Wow. Okay. Look, before we finish, Theo, I wanted to ask you about Austin Tice, the American journalist who was detained in Syria more than a decade ago, similar time to you originally, a little bit later. The US believes he was being held by the Assad regime, and Joe Biden has said that he believes Austin Tice is still alive, but he hasn't been located. I understand on both those counts, both the Assad regime and him continuing to be alive, you have a different view, right?
Yes, I do. I've just been listening to this very entertaining podcast by Rory Stewart about ignorance and the way that we like develop ideas on insufficient notions or insufficient proof, and we develop these certainties and we live with them. And in fact, there's no warrant for them. Anyway, I think something like this has happened with the case of Austin Tice. Everyone has presumed that he went off with a regime on insufficient evidence. And in my view, there is sufficient evidence to believe that he was captured by my people. And in fact, they did tell me this. The individual who told me this seemed very not a credible character. However, I felt that in general, like what they were doing to him in the video, having lived through that, I'm like, that's them. When I saw that video, I'm like, that's them. Allegedly, the commentators in fact, the commentators have looked at that video and said, oh, no, it's all a fake. But I look at that video, I go, no, that's probably pretty true. And I know that like the future minister of culture and the ambassador of this and the ambassador of that know something about what became of Austin Tice. So when the next ambassador to the UK arrives in London, it will be appropriate to ask this guy, like, you've been killing a lot of people. That's clear. They kill a lot of Alawites, but perhaps you also killed our colleague, Austin Tice, and here's the evidence to prove it. Can you help us at least find the body? And this kind of way of thinking is not happening among the journalists whose responsibility, as far as in my view, is to make proper inquiries and not make improper assumptions.
Finally, Theo, having been through an experience that most people would regard as a literal nightmare, I understand you look back on it as almost as a positive, rewarding experience. Would that be right? Can you explain that to us?
You have a chance to look back on your life and you go, if ever I had a second chance to live my life again, how would I do it better? And how would I be a better person? How could I not make the mistakes? And, one of my mistakes was I didn't cherish life enough. I was too casual. I didn't value or respect the love that people were giving me, and they were giving to me. I was just like, I don't care. I got to go to Syria. I have important things to do. So, in this respect, one learns what's important and what isn't. One thing that's not important is your stupid journalist, dumb little idea that you had. There's, all of the journalists that ran into trouble in Syria, I think they were chasing the same little butterfly over the cliff. And they had even less reason to chase it than I did. They didn't speak Arabic. I knew nothing of Syria. And I think if they could come back and talk to us now, they would tell us, that don't do this. It's a dumb idea. Like the Syrians are also capable of telling the truth about themselves. And let's just interview them.
Thank you very much indeed. Theo Padnos, great to speak to you.
Thank you for having me and inviting me.